We are live. And I'm gonna start. Here we go. What's up, everybody? My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid, and you are watching DL Live. It's a daily stream show in which we talk about game design. On our Discord, we talk about game design all day. And on these streams, we like to pick one or two topics or whatever and talk about them with video or live discussion or whatever. You're welcome to join our Discord. You're welcome to join in on these streams and on these conversations. But for now, we're just going to kind of recap a conversation that we had earlier today and then kind of talk about it while I play some N++. Yay! Okay. I think that's one of the last levels I played. So I got on the stream with me, I got Adrian, and he's going to catch us up to speed. He's going to read a little bit of what was said in the Discord channel. But I think the whole thing started with a, maybe I should post this on the screen so they can follow it easier. No. The whole thing started when we were talking about, what was it? Just a lot of comments that people make about the new God of War. They say that the game was just generic AAA whatever, and the combat was mediocre at best. And you're like, you know, mediocre means average. And I was like, where are all these other games that people claim have the same kind of combat, same level of combat as God of War? You know, that was just a general question I threw out there. And then one of the responses is from Tony, big fan of God of War, and he was commenting on how, what did he say? Boy, among other comments. But he said that the game doesn't have a scoring system like Devil May Cry and other games, so like a lot of people didn't push themselves to dig into it more deeply. And in my opinion, I'm like, scoring systems don't affect like how deep the combat is, and this is kind of getting into that topic of how you motivate players or how you provide feedback and what pushes them to kind of dig deeper in your game. And from my view, intrinsic motivation is a huge thing, right? Players need to want to do things, otherwise they're not going to learn in the first place. And most of the skill requires some straight up learning of new things with knowledge-based memorization. So like, it's not going to happen unless they want to do it. But other than that, he mentioned that he has a friend who complained that the combat in God of War just let him dodge and attack, you know, which is kind of like an oversimplification for one, but being able to dodge in a game and then attack, it's like, those are like defense and offense. You can't complain about that. I'm sure there's much more to that person's particular dislike for the combat system, but it's clearly not presented here in the statement. Beyond that, our friend Tony said his friend complained that the combat was just letting him dodge and attack, and he feels like if you don't push players to fully explore a moveset, they'll just play the safe way. To which my response was like, you know, no one really fully explores these games, right? Especially like highly sort of action-based combat style games. People don't really typically fully explore that like they do collectibles or other world exploration and other style games. And I said no one really fully explores it. Ultimately, the player isn't intrinsically motivated. It's game over. Games can't force people to do or feel anything, and some people just want life to work for them instead of the other way around, so they get what they deserve if they find these games uninteresting, right? If they're not bringing enough to the table. So this is kind of like a reoccurring topic that pops up every now and then. And a lot of people kind of use the language that says, oh, the game didn't make me do X or Y, or this movie didn't make me feel anything, just to I say it mostly comments on their lack of intrinsic motivation, their lack of effort, right? So like, these things aren't here to make you do stuff, right? Video games are challenges that you elect into. Movies and things are stories that you choose to spend your time on, and you willingly suspend your disbelief. The show doesn't make you suspend your disbelief. That's why the whole original quote was the willing suspension of disbelief. So just to get some of these art forms and these entertainment mediums to work, you gotta kind of put in the first step. You gotta pop in the first chip. You gotta make the first move, kind of a thing. So in response, we have a few other people in our Discord that responded with at links. So Adrian, do you want to take over and read a little bit of that as I fumble around with this menu?
Yeah. The first major response goes, games can force people to do stuff for sure. It's called a challenge. Saying that it's wanting it to work for them is silly. That's just the difference between a toy and a game. So the criticisms of being able to play passively is valid if you value challenges more than toys. Note that similar criticisms of the game not demanding much of you are made of DMC, because the enemies are rather simple and you can get by with little, but everyone recognizes that the value of DMC is in all the creativity it allows.
DMC stands for Devil May Cry.
Yeah. Contrast that with Ninja Gaiden, which also has a deep and open combat system, but the game itself demands that you gain a lot more mastery of it. Other notable examples of challenging and deep games that aren't just toys are Vanquish, Devil Daggers, and Tormentor X Punisher, just off the top of my head. Note that being challenging doesn't mean it's more constrained or less open, just that you need to understand more of the game to get through it. Quake is in a sort of middle ground, in that the game is challenging, demanding that you be able to manage all the usual elements of crowd control, target prioritization, and spatial control, but you don't really need to bunny hop and rocket jump like crazy to be able to get through the levels, so it leaves those techniques to the player's motivation. Toy elements and good challenges are in no way exclusionary, but the criticism of a game letting you get by with minimal effort is a criticism of its challenges. There's a second comment though, but a lot was said there.
Yeah, take it one at a time. Yeah, so I think that response has a lot of different things in it. And largely it was responding to things that were not in my original statement. Mine was more about why players explore games, like what actually gets them to dig deeply into things, whether like the depth can be there. We kind of talked about this before in the Smash a series of streams, but you can put a feature in a game or a system or a mechanic or whatever, but people don't necessarily use it. Even in like high level competitive play, they're not necessarily gonna know about it or use it or like it or whatever. So there's a lot more to design and understanding how things ultimately affect players than just like I stuck it in there, the game is X hard or whatever. So when we're talking about here, you know, games was a challenge thing you want to work from silly. What was the last thing you said, Adrian? We were going from the top of the comment, right?
Mm-hmm. The last thing said is, oh my god, this is a really long sentence. Okay, it was about Quake, and that it's in sort of a middle ground, but you don't really need to do things like bunny hopping and rocket jumping.
Yeah, so his comment... His comment touches on a lot of like different things, like, you know, challenging games and what it forces. Why am I going this way? I'm dead. What it forces players to do and what minimal thing can a game do to encourage engagement and a lot of other topics, right? But my topic was mainly on just motivation and how people learn and eventually come to like things in the first place. I thought I had a double jump. Yeah, and also my comments were not trying to exclude the importance of challenge, right? But I feel like a lot of critics who overly talk about challenge, which is definitely not coming from the whole like games journalism, games criticism side of things, they almost never talk about challenge because they're really after and writing about very different kinds of topics. But in general, like the people who talk about challenge most are mostly gamers, right? And people who are playing these games for competition, score, and all these different sort of other aspects. That was pretty cool. So, yeah, I try to de-emphasize the talk about challenge a lot because it's really sort of a flexible topic when you're talking about challenging the game. Like the game is X hard, but then how that affects players is different, and how each player comes to find different parts of your game challenging is different, and then the whole point of a game is to sort of either test your skills or help you build the skills in order to overcome challenges, especially single player games. So it hardly even matters talking about challenge when the whole point is like they're going to give you the tools necessary for it to not be challenging anymore. So I feel like overemphasizing challenges just leads the conversation in a direction it just doesn't need to go, and not much is said besides like the game's hard, and if it's too easy then blah blah blah. You're like, yeah, we get it, we understand what hard and easy is. Like, we understand how that affects games because we've been playing games, and everybody kind of gets that. So yeah, you can keep reading the sentence, Adrian, or you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, the last one was about toy elements and good challenges are no exclusionary, but the criticism of game letting you get by with minimal effort is a criticism of its challenges. So, probably that one more is to key in, because in a way, I'm also left thinking about, you know, your own feelings towards, shit, what was that game called? Flint Hook? Was that the one?
Man, this level pissed me off. Why did they put that right at the end? Flint Hook, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your whole thing was about how the challenge in that game was, you know, pretty, like, whatever. So, I mean...
Yeah, so... one of my issues with Flint Hook, which, if you guys are really curious, I think I streamed it on one of these DL lives. You can kind of go back and look at it. But now I gotta like practice this ending part because I don't have enough practice. So lame. But yeah, it wasn't that it wasn't challenging. Like, that's kind of like a different way of getting at this more complex issue. It didn't have anything to say, right? Its levels weren't composed to create interesting ideas through its interactivity, and a lot of the kind of interesting parts were very one note. And then since the rooms were randomly shuffled around and randomly generated, it didn't connect to the other parts of its experience very well, so the whole experience was just really flat. Why couldn't I do that the first time? Bah! I don't even know what I did there, but I'm not gonna think about it. Yeah, so that's what I have to say about Flint Hook. So a lot of times we use the word challenge a lot, but it really is connected to so many other more detailed and interesting topics. Right now, I'm being challenged. Oh, I was so close. I almost touched that. Oh, come on.
So, the next comment was about, okay, it goes, a good example of a challenge game that also has a lot of room for self-motivated growth is Desync, which is really good and interesting. Mentioning it because I've been playing it recently and also wasn't very successful despite being very interesting. Closest reference. Yeah.
That comment doesn't make any sense. Like, the whole thing about self-motivation is you bring it to the table. So like, the game no game has more or less room for self-motivation because that's the thing you bring. Like, it's just a game. You can be self-motivated to like play the same game over and over, or dig deep into its systems, or just replay its systems, like whatever. But trying to kind of separate out that the game has any kind of intrinsic quality like that is not understanding properly. But
okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. Its closest referent would be Bulletstorm, in that it has attack combinations between weapons, much like DMC combos, but Desync has more interesting varied enemies and more weapon interplay, so it's much richer. It's challenging at a base level, but the game puts a lot of emphasis on having the player explore themselves the possible attack combinations they can do, and has a scoring system built around that. So the base interactions of a shooter are demanded through the challenges, and the creative combinations are left for the player to explore. So yeah, similar to DMC in that respect.
Yeah, that's the whole Devil May Cry versus Ninja Gaiden basic debate. How the first enemies in Ninja Gaiden try to kill you and they're deadly. You're like, oh, this game is so hard. And then like, look at the enemies in Devil May Cry. They just stand around and they're kind of like punching bags. Like, oh, so easy. But like, Devil May Cry gets hard and Ninja Gaiden progressively gets not as hard because it starts off in a harder place. And when you kind of think about the entire experience, like, I don't think those two things matter too much, especially when you're like, oh, does Devil May Cry have a hard mode? Yeah. Does it have a really, really hard mode? You're like, yeah. I mean, like, who cares where it starts? Or maybe it's like only of minor importance where it starts, but where it ends up, or like what it's like along the way, also important considerations that people seem to gloss over. I keep jumping into the same explosion because I'm trying to think. Why did I just not win this? That's fine. This is just background. It was amazing how good my beginner's luck was on this level, and now like I've died so many times. That's crazy. Beginner's luck makes me so angry sometimes. I want to harness its power. Wow. Beginner's luck. Why? Some of the hitboxes on these stupid interactions and explosions. I think In's body is actually what you see when he sticks out his leg, and when he changes animations, it actually changes his hurt box. Unlike Mario, who's always like a block. This is annoying. Like I'm trying to dance deftly around these explosions, and I think his back leg. His back leg kind of changes. When I was trying to go for another super sensitive pickup, I could tell that like there's something odd about the hitboxes. Anyway, back on topic.
Yeah. So one last comment is from Sarah saying that if a game lets the player cheese through it, the game is cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
If it demands mastery, even if only for shiny medals, it is masterful. Depth not experienced may as well not exist. You need someone to grab your head and push you under. See all treasure games.
Those comments, like, again, like, don't make sense to me. Those things are just as a general comment, I've watched both of these people's progression through like Enlighten, and like that game has a system for actually measuring your mastery and looking at your progress over time and charting what you think and why you think it, and this whole weird obsession about like a game's difficulty and challenging you, like I think it's mostly just hot air. You look at the way that people play these games and the way they I hit the jump button twice and nothing came out. Come on. And the way they've played these games, you're like, well, the reason why you couldn't explore the depths is because some weird hang up in your own personal sort of learning style, right? So like the depths obviously there, the game's encouraging you to reach mastery, the game wants you to go higher, but for some reason you guys, like everyone has their own sort of slowing point and stopping point. So like this, that was so close. So this whole idea of just like, yeah, the game can force you to do something. No game, like as I said, can force you to do stuff. But beyond that, why do I blow up? Beyond that, he said, even if it's to get the game shiny whatevers and like the challenge is there, even if it's optional. Well, that's exactly what I was saying in the first place. The games don't force you to do stuff, and what you choose to accept as a challenge and go for and put your time into are the things that become more important and more apparent to you. So like that's the same freaking perspective. And I like another reason why I don't like talking about challenge is it's such a fleeting experience overall, like you being challenged by something, and then like everyone's using like the same basic learning techniques, and people just trial and erroring it. We're all just kind of winging it. We all like just playing games and trying over and over until we get it. Like that's almost all of what we do. Most people don't sit down and think think about their method or think about their methodology. Most people don't think about heuristics that much, and then most people don't communicate about their strategies. So like, come on, I'm putting you guys all in one big boat and saying like, get real. Like a lot of this is just the same. It's the same across the board. You tend to have certain genres and certain developers that you like better for whatever reason, whether you cut your teeth on their games earlier in life or whether you put time into it now, right? Or whatever, you're just used to the genre. Like there's always reasons, right?
So one of the things about Huitzilopochtli's comment is about the game being challenged at a basic level. So basically, okay, here's what I want to ask you. The whole concept of a skill floor and a skill ceiling, is it possible for a game to have a skill floor that's too low?
I mean, too low for what?
Anyone.
Too low for what? What effect or possibility are you trying to avoid by phrasing the question like that? Too low to... That's the thing.
Yeah, the effect or possibility to avoid would probably be, you know, the one that about the combat being mediocre or whatever.
I got it rank 180. That's my lowest rank. That last one was kind of neat, but you know, I'm not gonna rage about it too much. Continue.
Yeah. Effectively, you know, with the way certain people learn.
Yeah.
And kind of in related to what Zera's talking about, how about you need to be pushed in order to do more interesting things. So that's why I'm asking the question of, do you think you can have a skill floor that's too low? Because that seems to be the recurring comment about...
Too low for what?
Yeah.
For what? You have to answer the question.
I guess... I mean, I would say other people who need to be pushed.
So too low for them to what? Not get pushed hard enough to achieve what? To reach what?
To reach a satisfactory skill-based challenge. I know the thing is that it's relative.
It's just a non-comment basically. Like that's what we all understand. That difficulty is always just relative to the individual player, and what people don't talk about enough is like, oh, okay, well, what ideas can only be expressed through difficulty, like when you're actually required to sort of understand and work around the difference between complex systems. Like, oh, okay. So like strategy, for example, how easy can you make Advanced Wars? The Advanced Wars, some of the things you need to learn in order to play that game well are which units can attack which other units, which is matchup stuff, some basic movement stuff, and some basic CO stuff, like, oh, this grit has long range. Like, that's really all you need to know, I think, to kind of play the game for a decent way on the single player. So, like, that's not a lot. Sure, the game can get deeper. They have a scoring system for that and everything, but that's not a lot. Wow, this level. So, like, sure, you need more in your tank to fully appreciate and get all of the Advanced Wars goodness. But like, that's not what the single player are designed to do. They're designed to give you scenarios and kind of push you a little bit in the right direction. Like, hey, Drake's a naval CO. Maybe you should watch out for the sea. You're like, yeah. What's with the sea objects? Well, they have a lot of battleships. Woo! Woo! Oh, come on. Right, so you're like, oh, okay. That's not a lot. They help you appreciate the game's diversity, which is one way of just understanding its design space, which is another way of just understanding its complexity in general. So yeah, and you can make Advanced Wars so easy that, let's say you mash A, right? Mash A, and the units move themselves. So that means you don't have to be conscious about any of that. So like, yeah. But then there's like a smooth degree to which you can probably create a difficulty challenge that takes into account this complexity and kind of ignores it, right? There's like the whole degree of things you could sort of do with your level challenges. You can imagine these challenges too. Like Kid Icarus Uprising has like basically a story mode, no challenge whatsoever. You're practically invincible, and you just kind of walk through it and listen to the story without ever having to worry about your character dying. Yeah, that's like not the game, but that's fine.
I mean, with that example of Kid Icarus Uprising, that if that story mode was, for example, the only one available, I don't think I would probably have the same enjoyment of the game that I do now. Because part of it relies on how those enemy values are tuned, how frequently they attack, where they attack, and all of that.
That goes without saying, though. A game with differences make the difference, right? And of course, like that's what we generally understand about every sort of artistic work. Like, oh, I wouldn't have the appreciation of the story if I didn't read to the final chapter. Yeah, your appreciation of the story probably grew with every chapter. It's kind of how it works. Yeah, just in general. So, yeah, of course. And like when you look at a game more deeply and you do more stuff that takes into account that knowledge, it should affect your experience, right? But that's not. It doesn't say much. It just says the obvious. Like, oh, you looked into it more. That's why everyone sort of says, you know, deep. Like, you looked into it more deeply. You got more out of it. You see more than the average person. Like, correct.
Yeah. But the thing that I'm trying to come across is that whole skill floor thing where, or actually, I asked if there was a skill floor that was too low. What I probably should have asked if you could have a skill ceiling that was too low.
You mean just a game that's too hard? Sure.
No, skill ceiling.
Yeah, a game that's too hard. Or like the game doesn't get hard enough or whatever. Like that doesn't make any sense. Games and the challenges that they present are as hard as the complexity that they have in it. And if the skill ceiling's too low, that's just called easy mode or whatever. Where there's,
yeah.
or it's like shallow mode where there's nothing to think about, there's nothing to dig into. But then that's really not how complexity works. Like, you don't shove all this stuff generally into a game to have it all be sort of flattened out. So like, it's something I never worry about. I don't even know. When people put complexity in their game, they're trying to have that complexity represented so they can say, look, this game now has like flying elephants. Well, they're gonna have to code some flying elephants or whatever, and they're gonna do some hard work so that those elephants are in the game. And it's kind of hard not to even have that work for the game's benefit or whatever, even on a basic level, because just kind of representing it there like that works. Why? You're so stupid! Get this missile off me, Fox. Yeah, so it's like when you kind of keep your eyes set on why things are complex in the first place. Come on. Then you don't worry about all this stuff. It just doesn't come up. You have an idea. You want to sharpen it. You want to focus it. And it's less about difficulty. It's less about whatever. It's just about getting enough of the stuff in your idea in place. Wow. To express that idea. Haha, I was thinking. People seem to forget how long they took them to learn things and what challenge really meant to them. And like, they don't realize that, like, even if the game sets up all the challenges, how do I do this? Did I just screw myself over again? Why do I always do that one differently at the end if I do it at the beginning? You just like fly in there like this? How did I do that all the other times? I don't get it. What am I doing? Oh, so annoying. I just dropped down and got him or something? And then just jump out? Yeah? So I drop down, go to the right, and then just wall jump off the left wall, looks like. It's so annoying. Drop down, go to the right. And wall jump over here and then kind of go up. But yeah, any other questions? It's pretty...
I'm thinking... Because, you know, I don't want this to be something that I have to come back to on the stream in the chat again. Funny. If it comes back up
I don't
in
ever
the
want to
chat.
be back here again.
No, that's because, like, I'm also thinking of the Donkey Kong one, where, I mean, maybe simple enough to get from, you know, beginning to the end of that game. Well, I don't know. People keep saying that game's super hard, so.
You mean the original Donkey Kong?
Yeah, the original arcade Donkey Kong.
Oops. Almost got zapped. Sounds like you let a lot of the way other people phrase things and their statements. I'm just not paying attention. Sort of rattle you too much. There's nothing there. Like those comments they didn't have enough substance, so you don't have to rack your brain this hard.
No, the reason why I said that is because with the aforementioned Kid Icarus Uprising example brought up earlier, it's like, well, if the game was actually like that, would I enjoy it as much? No. Like,
well, yeah, it's called easy mode. That's what we were saying before.
Yeah, I know.
It's like if Harry Potter had like, no. That's so stupid. Get off me.
I mean, it's really just me thinking over my own question that I thought of from those responses. The whole dodge roll and attacking thing, which again the problem with that is it's just really reductive. Which is like, yeah, what action game is that not what you're doing? Or melee combat action game that is. So hearing that as a slight against God of War, it's like it doesn't really say much. Or that there's you know, sort of a basic cheap strategy you can use to get around a large amount of counters.
Yeah, I know people don't like cheese, but cheese is part of life.
Yeah.
It's a part of multiplayer games, it's a part of single player games, like it's simple, relatively simple seeming strategies and strategies that work. Oh no! I'm just not paying attention in a lot of cases, like it's in life, man. That's a decent enough strategy for that section.
Yeah.
that was pretty fun. I was like, okay, I practiced this so much that I had to do a strat on the fly. Don't die here.
Yeah. Kind of blanking out again. Because right now I'm just thinking of, okay, what games do I like have issues with because I think they're too easy? I guess Kirby's Epic Yarn kind of came to mind. Like, I kind of like that game, but there's another things where it's just like, man, some things in that game can be so slow, or just like basic. I don't know. Maybe not Kirby's Epic Yarn.
Yeah, that game, like on the base level, it's hard to die, but the game was actually pretty complex with moving platforms and the way they did their secrets and collectibles.
Yeah, it's kind of like how in any arcade game you can technically beat any arcade game by just, you know, credit feeding it all the way to the end. Nothing stops you from doing that.
You know, another way to think about it, I don't even have the chat popped out. Hopefully no one's chatting with me. Sorry, chat. If you're there, I just popped it out. It's too many things to remember.
Yeah.
A whole nother way of thinking about it is, okay, like just do my classic, one of my favorite tests, just do the whole piano test, right? Take all the statements that they said and then just replace the game part with the piano and then see how it sounds. Go ahead.
Good example of a challenging piano that also has a room for self-motivated growth is Piano, which is really good and interesting. The closest reference would be, I don't know, Violin. That it has attack combinations, okay. Piano combinations between your piano keys, much like the piano combos in Devil May Cry.
Piano combos in Devil May Cry.
But piano has more interesting and varied melodies and more rhythm interplay, so it's much richer. Jeez.
I didn't know that guy was...
Okay. It's challenging at a base level, but the piano puts a lot of emphasis on having the player explore themselves, the possible piano combinations they can do, and has a scoring system built around that. So the base interactions of a piano are demanded through the challenges, and the creative combinations are left for the piano player to explore, so yeah. Similar to Devil May Cry in that respect.
How is this end with similar to Devil May Cry? Oh, it's funny.
Yeah.
This is kind of a neat one, this level. Oh shoot, why would they do this ending? I'm tired of these levels with these wackadoodle endings.
Yeah, I'm just not... It's been a while since I've ever actually played a game that I'm like, man, this was too easy. So, because the thing is, like, with a game like Kid Icarus Uprising, so long as there's more room for me to play and do harder things, challenge myself, I'm kind of satisfied. So, that's why this, like, I understand what they're saying, but I don't myself experience it that much. So it's not often when I criticize some game for being too simple. The most you'll probably see me do is something similar to, I guess, what some of your grievances with Hollow Knight were, where it's just like, but that has more to do with variation than it has to do with the whole concept of a base level challenge plus your experimentation to a skill ceiling.
Yeah, so basically, if you like simple songs, you don't really have an argument about challenge. That's all there is to it. If you like the happy birthday song, if you like simple jingles, if you like the simple melodies in some of your favorite pop songs, then what are you freaking complaining about, right? These things aren't just abstract challenge factories, right? They're conveying a concept. And when the concept is put forth, even if it's not like the trickiest, most complex thing in the world, your enjoyment of it comes from even understanding it in its simplicity. Why did I get this right and not that right? Why? Ah! Golly. Anyway, I don't consider this to be the kind of good kind of level design with the one-hit kills thing. This skill right here is very different from that last skill they challenge you from the end. So it's not like you're practicing and practicing these kinds of jumps and at the end they're like, now it's the hardest version, go for the risky thing. It's just like, oh, it's an extra little spot with bombs. And you're like, okay. Not quite as elegant as it should be. Sure, like, get it. Long gauntlet. Maybe this makes more sense in the hardcore mode where you don't get your time reset. So every time you die and it resets, you have to like, oh no, those are my resources. How do I get through this level with enough gold? Like, that's cool too, in a different way, but that's still just kind of beside the point. This level has just sort of this extra non-thematically continuous thing when otherwise the entire other part of the level is pretty, gosh darn it, continuous. I think another thing that upsets me about talking about challenge like this is it's so inconsistent. And like, there's none of these games that are so strict that there's only one way to beat it. Like, none of them are mentioning Guitar Hero, none of them are mentioning like Rhythm Heaven or some kind of super linear strict game like I Want to Be the Guy or something like that. They're all just talking about games that are just more systemic and more open to you doing different things and exploring it in different ways. So like, okay, the game didn't walk you through their entire design space, did they? They just put carrots in front of you and you decided you were hungry and you were a rabbit and you just went for them. Momentum left. Oh, I hate this. This is so dumb. It's just so slow and you kind of try to turn your brain off before you get back to it. I just don't like games that do this almost at all. These long one-hit kills, everything's on the line kind of things, and then frequent resets and stuff like, I just don't think that's good. As a singular challenge, and this game is just filled with singular challenges that they just kind of string together. There's really not much you can do if all it is one room, but then it isn't all just one room. So like, these problems still occur.
Remember Soft Body had a bit of that.
Yeah, we're such a long level, and it's just like, why? I did so many things, and there's not even a checkpoint or anything. Oh, come on, I didn't touch that.
You know, Soft Body was, I think, was a game that you said had ideas that could only be expressed because of how, you know, difficult the whole controlling two things was.
I mean, so like every idea can only be expressed with the complexities needed to express it. So like, if controlling two things at once is absolutely essential to the idea, then that's the only way you can do it. A lot of people just think like a lot of elements in games and stuff can just be substituted and they get the gist or whatever, and they'll still get the quote-unquote experience. It's like, it's not true. People are kidding themselves if they think, you know, selecting on easy mode they can get the experience. You're getting an easy experience, not the normal or the hard or any other. You get exactly what it says. Oh my gosh, so annoying. And this is like not even challenging at all to get there. So like these little timers, they're just safe spots, like pure safe spots. So like this is almost a nothing level. Just it looks neat, so it's cool to watch them worm around. Other than that, like there's nothing to it. Just like a stop and go station kind of a thing, like stop and go, stop and go. And then I keep messing up this ending. I can't believe I missed that one. One gold at one time. Annoying. going for high speed and stuff like that is more interesting. But another thing people need to stop talking about when talking about games is like, oh, this will make an interesting speedrun. Stop it. I get it. There's a huge speedrunning culture. Games become more interesting when you do more with them, regardless of speedrunning or whatever. Like, quit saying that. Like, it's not even a insightful comment. It's just like, oh, when people keep doing things with this game, it's going to be more done with this game. Like, yeah, I get it. Oh my gosh, took my eye off the prize.
Yeah, so what what I'm getting from this, the takeaway from this is that, even if you could objectively measure the minimum amount of skill and the minimum amount of effort that you needed to complete any gameplay challenge, so long as there is a skill ceiling that a player can reach for, there isn't much worth complaining about.
I just don't think skill ceilings are that important either. Go ahead, master a game, master a simple game. Just because there's harder piano songs out there means nothing for the song that you have to play right now. Like, go ahead and find a way to master it, get every note right, perfectly express the musical ideas. It's a lot harder than it seems. Or it's a lot harder than... Ah! Get off me, missile! Ah! Ah! Oh no! Wow! Almost blew up in the end. It's really good to not waste your beginner's luck, because that was a lot of it right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who cares about this whole like I gotta prove my EPing kind of stuff? With like games that are quote unquote hard to tell everyone else that I'm better than them. Like the whole stress of difficulty in games, a lot of it is still comes from that. And like, you guys aren't that skilled. You guys don't even realize how sort of what? How do I do this one? Okay. Unskilled people are, so like I just let it all go. That's what I did. This one's kind of cool. If you get this gold early, because you have to get it early, and that means that thing will chase you in the end. Otherwise, you can have a relatively simple level. I think a lot of games don't even do this with their level design. Like, okay, if you want to open the floodgates, open them. You're like, oh yeah? You're like, yeah. Oh yeah? Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah. But I'm not sure if I would buy the idea that skill ceilings don't matter.
I didn't say they didn't matter. I said they aren't required to do the thing that you said they were. Like, as long as there's a skill ceiling, then people shouldn't complain. I'm just saying people shouldn't complain, period. There's a lot they're not appreciating about simple things. There's a lot they don't understand about simple things. And simple things are a lot harder than they even give credit for. So the whole conversation, I say stop and just you focus on thinking more deeply and getting better, and not worry about what is the maximum. Like, did I max out the game? Did I, get the highest score? Did I beat everyone else? Like, all that's not important at all. You'll hold yourself back thinking that way. So the more people that focus on it, like, oh, you're just amateurs, like chumps. Kind of like, beginning creators oftentimes will obsess about being unique and original. Like, I want to do something original that no one else has done. How about you just focus on doing something good? Because you got a whole lot. Oh, come on. That guy's homing is super slow, but the missiles are super fast? I'll kill him. Or the person who's trying to focus on making like their first game project, like the best game ever. Like, you won't. You can't. Stop. Like, focus on the things that are in front of you. You'll miss it. The smoothie is so good. I did a whole bucket of fruit. Blend it up. It's similar to the whole like simple stories thing. People have a bias against simple stories. They don't think commercials make good stories. They don't even like to consider them for like, you know, that was a great story, well told, well executed. They're just like, oops, no. They're just like following a basic idea that they got from, you know, school, and the weirdest impression of like, oh, you know, the best books, the great American literature, these books, so therefore books obviously tell good stories. Like, you wouldn't even know. That was fun.
Yeah.
It's 372. People don't even know. There's a lot. So like a lot of times too, when I want to see what people are made of, I just let them like talk, like say everything you gotta say, right? And if all the things you gotta say about difficulty right out in freaking like 5 minutes, then you don't have much to say, and you don't, unless you like feel like you've distilled the most meaningful essence. Like there's so much more to say, and you're probably not saying it because you're just like lacking experience in so many different ways. So I just let people say whatever, and then I get back to work. I focus on the things that I know are important, and I keep building. That was a bad move.
Just on another note about challenge, and the meaning derived from it. It's like, because for example, one was that with Celeste. Slowing that game down to 80% ended up making
I should do a stream of that, even though I don't own it. It's on my brother's Switch.
But I mean,
oh, this one's tricky. Wow.
If you have a scenario like that where decreasing the speed made the game more interesting to you, could you not also have a similar scenario where, well, I mean, okay, there can still be a similar scenario where, you know, decreasing to such a point removes or lessens the reflexes, timing, and dexterity that you use in order to play the game, and, you know, therefore some of the fun that you would have in playing it, because your issue with the game, I guess in a sense, being too hard was that you couldn't use those skills because, you know, things were too fast, or
yeah,
there was too much.
The game was unfair. So like,
yeah, the game was.
By slowing it down, you increase the fairness because you can increase the amount of skill you can exert. So instead of things being outside of human skill, they're within it, and that just makes the game basically a game. Less to do about fun and more about like actually making sure that it's a. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, this kind of goes to the easy mode thing, where you can see a similar situation where, say, this game you're playing right now probably would become a whole lot less interesting if you like cut the speed in half and it was in slow motion.
I wouldn't
because
say that.
The amount of skill.
The whole thing about the skill thing is, surprisingly, slowing things down doesn't just like detract from the skill. It's still there for the most part, for most situations, aside for like a lot of reflex stuff. So that's like the surprising part.
Yeah, I remember in the Skill Spectrum series where slowing things down.
Oh shoot! Is that my only exit?
Moves things more away from solely using your knowledge.
Yeah, to having to memorize things ahead of time because you can't react, you can't time it. It's just like, okay, I'll just memorize everything.
Yeah, there was, I believe, a curious effect that happened with timing, where slowing it down
preserves, in a regular way, it preserves a lot of the timing challenges. So static timings are still static, but they might just be a different kind of static. But as long as they can be subdivided fairly evenly, like, it's still the same challenge.
I believe reflex, though, you know.
No!
goes down once you slow it beyond a certain point.
Yeah,
Because
like
you know the whole-
yeah, it could just get to so slow that it's just not even about reflexes anymore. You can just see everything and just go like, Advance Wars. I'll just play my units.
Yeah.
Oh wow, look at this one. This one doesn't look like a hard one. There's like no moving pieces, but it is like a maze. Interesting. These level and all these different designs, they're pretty different. This is pretty remarkable. To have 10,000 of these, I'll see eventually. This is kind of what I liked about Jumpman too. Like, ooh, lots of levels. They're all different. They're pretty short. Yep. Darkwing Duck. Yep. Time's it.
I haven't seen Darkwing. It's 11:46 your time. Oops.
Darkwing Duck.
So yeah, about an hour.
Cool. Yeah, I like a lot of. I don't know. I think a lot of people too get way over influenced and overconfidence by the whole like you win screen. They're like, well, if I win, there's nothing else to do. This game needs to challenge me with more stuff so I don't even reach the win screen. Like there's always going to be degrees, right? Oh my gosh, there's always going to be degrees. There's always going to be finesse. There's always going to be stuff like that for almost every game. Very few games are just so simple that you're just like, it's going to be that every single time, and I can't do anything about it. And even so, yeah.
That's kind of sort of where I was getting at with the skill ceiling, where which usually most games have, where as long as there's some way to do things better, to push yourself more, and to see more, and try out new things, because that's, I believe, one of the points you were making in your depth from simplicity series. Yeah, Death from Simplicity, that's right. Because that's the one where you invoked Rhythm Heaven, where even in that game, which most linear game out there, the way you use your knowledge to understand the timing challenges is varied and varies from person to person, so there's still always more you can do to exert skill and mastery over.
A lot of people don't generally talk about reading books or understanding stories in terms of skill and skill ceilings and all this stuff. But it's funny, like people have really low reading comprehension. People have really low abilities to track what's happening in stories. So like, it's not. Obviously it takes skill to understand high level stuff. So like, that's largely what we're talking about here. But people just seem to have all these weird kind of requirements for games. Like they must do this, and like where in the rest of your life are you demanding such rigor? I don't know. So this is an example of testing the same skill, right? Oh, like can you jump high and then land? Like can you stop your horizontal momentum and land? You're like, oh, now here's the real test. But then they do stuff like that. And like they actually weren't testing my ability to vary the height in which I enter these things. So they probably shouldn't have put bombs at the base of that, so that I would push down so hard I'd explode. It just seems a little like not what they're testing here. So I'll just do that. I guess they just want you to use the same jump you were doing for those, which is okay. And by the end, you should be like easy street because I practiced and died a lot. Okay. Get one of them. That was close. I had to run those counts on the fly. I'm so tired.
It's intense just watching.
Oh, why? That's a trap. Going for the goal immediately was obviously a trap. I said that's a trap. I did it anyway.
How do you feel about hard counters in action games?
There's nothing to say about it.
Okay.
It's like,
Does that mean
it's such a small system in such a larger consideration. Like, I have no general thoughts about hard counters in action games. In general, the difference between a hard counter and a soft counter is just a matter of discreteness, right? Like, does this like absolutely cut this off, or is it like degrees, and is there finagling to it, or to the extremeness that this cuts it off? Like, oh, that's strong, so therefore it's a hard counter because you can't even like level up or get past it or whatever. Like, that's generally what I hear and think about. But that's just a matter of discretion and balance, and they could mean a lot, could mean a little. Just it depends on so many other factors.
okay?
Underneath, sucker. Oh, shoes.
Because currently what I had on my mind was Salmon Run, and thinking how different what the game would be if the fly fish did not require you to throw a bomb into each of its baskets.
Yeah, I was wondering if there should be like some other kind of weak point, considering. But the answer is no. Oh, how do I get out of this?
Well, I mean, part of the traps that they set up with various enemy combinations is because the only other way, besides the bombs,
Oh, why? Go ahead.
using a special. So sometimes one of the things I'm wondering that because the enemy is has so few ways to deal with it, because it's on the stricter side, and because of its requirements for taking it out, that jeez, come on, man, I'm tired too. I can't finish my goddamn sentence.
Sentences are hard.
Sentences are hard, but what's worse is that I had this thought completed out because I wanted to make sure to have a complete statement before I would say this, and then I forgot what it was. This game isn't helping me because it's also fairly interesting.
You're talking about Grizz and hard counters and weaknesses for fly fish and bombs and.
And because it's an example of one of the things. Well, the game needs. What game forced me to do things was, here's an enemy that literally forces you to use 2 bombs. Yeah. Not 1, but 2 bombs in order to take it out, and it's like...
Yeah, it's so funny how there's a lot of language that kind of flip flops on so many of these different design options, right? Like, oh, I don't like Zelda bosses that force me to bomb, and then you let them do like whatever they want. Like, this boss doesn't make me do anything. I just wail away. You're like, okay, which one? Because it's binary here. Either it forces it absolutely, or they let you slide and do whatever. I don't get it sometimes. People so quickly flip flop back and forth on that one. I'm just like, ignore.
Yeah.
This should be my last N plus set of levels because my eyes are crisscrossing. Yep. And when you crisscross, you can't see the enemy coming. I see. I understand. I know what's going on. I know what's up. I don't know what's up. Here we go. I'm not getting enough height when I try to jump out of this moon mess. Moonraker. Oh no, that guy better not follow me in here. Oh, please don't. No? Oh my gosh. And then all the new mistakes start happening as my brain tries to process that whatever just happened.
Jorge Risto says jump into the slope and quickly jump again against the wall.
Yeah, and then don't blow up, right? Thanks.
Shoot, nice.
That was just level 2. I'm gonna just put my Switch in sleep mode. Is that it? Is that it for us? Adrian, is that it?
Yeah, I would say that's it.
Cool. I'm gonna blow up and call that a stream, guys. Yeah, I've never heard of this guy. Jorgeristo? I can barely even read it on my black background with the blue text. But welcome to the chat. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. We stream every day, so you know, if you don't catch it today, you'll catch it another day. And if you have a topic you want to bring up that you're just dying to talk about, that's what we do in the DO chat. Bring them in. Just try not to bring in all the anger and the hate and the craziness, and we'll just deal with it like designers do. So that's it for today's stream. Just a lot of talk about difficulty and random things while I play in ++. Follow us on all the stuff. Give us a like on the YouTube if you actually survive this long. If you just like watching N+ and you don't care about game design, then I hope my gameplay didn't completely make you pull your hair out. But until next time, later guys.